Now.
Okay, so since we now have Reeve Whitstock with us, and since it's 8:31, and that would make Shelley very happy to start on an odd number. So call the meeting to order at 8:31. We have an agenda in front of us. Any additions to the agenda? Councillor Christie.
If not, I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. The council meeting minutes from the May 10th meeting were circulated. Any errors or omissions? Councillor McGee.
I move to adopt the minutes as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the May 10th regular meeting minutes as presented. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously as well. All right, I know it's just 20 seconds early, but we have a delegation at 8:33, and so we're going to ask Ms. Jackson Berry if she would join us, and she's coming to present on behalf of Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services. So welcome, Shelley. Would you like introductions? Maybe we should do that because we have a couple of new counselors. How would that be?
Sure, that sounds great.
I'm sure you know them both, but we'll let that happen anyway. So, Councillor Forbes, please.
Carrie Phobes, Division 4.
Hello, Laura Lee Michelle Cunningham, Division 5.
Of course, Ken King.
Wade Christie.
I'm Faye McGee.
Morning, Shelley.
Good morning, Reeve and Council. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, those of you who know me know I love an audience. And then when I get to talk about FCSS, it's a great day. So thank you for letting me start my week this way. So I thought I would run through a little bit about the annual report from 2021 that was approved at the last Kneehill Regional FCSS board meeting. And then just if we have time, share some of the trends that we're seeing through the Kneehill area, which would be probably covering 2021, 2022. So I think I had the pleasure of popping in a little bit earlier with some of the new council, just to let you know that, so the way FCSSs across the province are set up are you can access funding, and it's based on per capita from the provincial government, as long as it's a partnership with municipalities and they contribute a minimum of 25%. So it's an 80-20 split in funding. So it can be accessed that way. So for Kneehill Regional FCSS, 2021, so the year the report was our 23rd year of operating as a regional program. So next year will be a big year for us. As they have for, I wish I should have looked the exact year, the 6 municipalities actually over-contribute because of their strong beliefs in supporting the social emotional well-being of people in the Kneehill area. And in 2021, they contributed an additional 6% more than was required with their partnership with the province. So I am passionate about FCSSs because they get to be locally driven, and a lot of times we don't have that pleasure. There's a program that, say, the province or the federal government says, you know, this is the initiative we're working on, whether that be specifically early childhood or specifically addictions or whatever that looks like. And so then there's a project that's money available. But FCSSs are unique and have been for many years since the partnership, that once the money is given to the municipalities, they can decide how to, I mean, within the parameters of well-being, how they can best support their residents. So I think that really makes it much more locally responsive, because it's the municipalities and the communities who have a better idea of what is needed in the Kneehill area than, you know, a larger center knowing what that would look like. So anyway, so that's one of the passionates around it. So it's really good that the local board, our Kneehill Regional FCSS board, gets to really drive the focus of the funding and the programs that are delivered. So 2021 was the first full year. I think I had mentioned to you guys that we had lost a lot of funding, and it was grant funding from the Alberta government that was outside of our partnership through FCSS, but it funded a number of programs that supported our area residents, which then freed up the board to be able to have a little more flexibility with their funding. So 2021 was the first year that we had a full year without that. And so it'll change what you see in our annual report a little bit. So right off the bat, in the past, our additional funding was much higher that we had outside of that funding that you see there. So, and I don't think, can you flip for me? Thanks. So just we'll even see on this page, so that individuals served from programs were down a bit. Now I think that the funding had some part of it to do, but certainly COVID. Just not having that ability to do most of our community discovery nights and a number of things like that really would have impacted our individuals served as well. So it was down a bit from 2020, down 2.6%. And so again, just some of the loss of the funding when we went from 3 family resource workers down to 2 family wellness workers. And then the board decreased the amount of funding they had for family marriage counseling. So just some of those little things impacted the number, as well as COVID. Our volunteers number was down again with COVID and those sorts of things. But the good news is the amount of hours per volunteer that they contributed was up. So it was, they were contributing 47.5 hours. As you can see, the number of volunteers and the hours volunteered in our area. So, and we'll move to that. So yeah, big thing that Kneehill Regional FCSS does is information and referral. We do have access to a large number of services and supports, but so few of them are located in our area. And so sometimes they're really hard to find. So whether that be phone calls and emails, people coming into our office. So that's kind of a big role. And then we fit in there the community services directory that we put together every year, which is there to help individuals but organizations to make sure they're supporting our residents to get connected to the best possible service. And interagencies, the Child and Youth Working Group, all those sorts of things are just trying to better connect people to services and supports and provide the information to those who are supporting our residents with the best possible connections and supports. Our community volunteer income tax program is always a big one that we do. And so last year, 237 returns. And so one of the things that we have done kind of provincially, because there's a large number of FCSSs in the province who do the community volunteer income tax program, is we just try and calculate the credits and the benefits that people receive because they did their taxes. So when we have people who are struggling financially, that's the first question we always ask them: did you do your taxes? Because you get your GST rebate and you would have access to the climate incentive, I'm sorry, I'm missing the full long title of that, the child tax benefit, and then for some of our seniors being able to even access a number of their senior benefits, have to have your taxes done. So we calculate that. So, and we submit this as well to our outcomes trainers in the province. And so we contribute to a much larger number, but from us, $1,200,000 was whether that be credits that they got back, the workers' tax credit, whatever that is. So we just keep a track of that. So it really does make a huge difference, and it's those 11 volunteers. Wow, we process that, we screen them in and get the information we need and get it out to volunteers, but it's the volunteers who do all that amazing work. And unfortunately, they don't always get to hear the amazing thank yous from all of the residents. So we do pass them on to the best of our ability. So Tools for School is another program that we do, and the numbers, so last year we did 50 backpacks, and again, that's 100% donated funds because FCSS can't spend money on that, and it's done by volunteers. And so 50 youth, and that tends to be average. 2019, our numbers were much higher. I don't know what the blip was. It was closer to 70, but usually we're in that 45 to 50 backpacks every year. And again, the communities have been very supportive of that, so donating to that for us. So. And then I'm just gonna, one of the other things, so that's a lot about outputs. There's some more there that you can read. But the other thing that we do and we contribute to provincially is a lot of times, well, many times, prevention is sometimes hard to measure. So how did we, did we really have an impact that that person didn't end up in emergency because they were able to access services earlier, or weren't part of the connected to the RCMP. So one of the things that provincially been working hard on is, so what? So if people are participating in our programs, what sorts of differences are we seeing? So a lot of it is, most of our stuff is all connected to research. So we know, and I'll just give an example of the first one there, so that we know that when people have optimism and they have meaning and purpose, that does increase their social well-being. So like those are just some of the reasons that those are the sorts of things we measure because of the research saying that these are the things that contribute to an individual's social well-being. So as you can see, 95, and for us, passing grade is 80%. Thank goodness that wasn't me in school, or I might not be here. But 80% is our passing grade. So as you can see, for individuals, that enhancing of resiliency, self-esteem, optimism, autonomy, and meaning and purpose, our respondents, the people who participated in our programs, 95% of them were saying that those skills were enhanced for them. And the family one on the next page, again, we're seeing, I got a line, are feeling connected, and improve family communications and parenting. So again, knowing that improved communications can really enhance families. So again, 96% there. And then that community part. So those are the three areas that FCSS focuses on: social well-being of individuals, families, and then community as a whole. And so we were seeing that there's stronger connections to community resources, which is important that people, because the more they know about the resources, the evidence shows that the sooner they will access those services, because the harder you have to look, the longer you delay accessing those services and supports. And then agencies, we spend a lot of time working with agencies and organizations, and they felt they were more informed, which helped them better support Kneehill area residents. So all of that is just some of the outcomes that we've seen in 2021. Now, Deputy Reeve, do I have enough time to move into some trends?
Sure you do. We have another delegation at 9, and I'm sure there's probably some questions, so try to give us
I'll try and zip through my trends fairly quickly. Thank you. So I don't want this to sound like a complete whining session. There is some really good stuff happening. One of the things that we are struggling a bit with is the centralization of larger government services and the need to access those online. And so that is creating a barrier for some of our people. And we're doing our best to assist them. We have people who do not have access to phones. We have people who don't have access to internet, or they just have data on a phone, and some of the forms are hard to fill out on a phone, those sorts of things. So we're doing our best, and so you know what, we're just also trying to get the word out to residents that we can try and assist with those things. People who probably live closer to Three Hills, it's easier for them to get to us. So some of our outlying communities, we are working hard to make sure that they know that through their village or town offices, they can access us to try and support in those sorts of things. So it is a struggle, and one that we have certainly shared with the provincial FCSSA Association to try and do some advocacy around that, because it is creating a barrier for some of our vulnerable people. Alberta Health Services, Mental Health and Addiction has also moved to an online intake service, and just this year, and it is causing some issues for some of our people. I haven't talked to someone in the last couple of weeks, but I talked to someone who sat on hold for 6 hours. When you're struggling with the person was accessing it for their child, and I said, how did you do that? And she said, I have to get help for my child. And then, once they got through, it's an hour intake process, which normally is done face-to-face. They would set up an appointment at the clinic, and the therapist would do the intake, but it was kind of part of a session. So I know that they're working to change that, but again, that is difficult for people who don't have a phone, or even paying by the minute for phone. Sitting on hold for a long time can create some issues. So doing our best to support people to access that, and letting them know that they can come to our office, or we can find other ways to support them to do that. As you guys are probably hearing, we're definitely seeing a lot of financial stress right now throughout the Kneehill area. Particularly, we're getting a lot of phone calls that people are struggling with their utility bills. And then we also have some people struggling with the price of gas, them getting to and from work, which again, we don't want those barriers. So we refer them to Alberta Works or Alberta Supports, and they don't tend to have a program, so they refer them back to us. But unfortunately, FCSS funds, that is one of the criteria from the province, is that we don't fund individuals. So to be able to give someone money is not an option. So anyways, we're trying to get creative and find if there's other programs and supports that we can try and connect them with, so that could free up some money in a different area, but sometimes it's not always successful. Mental health continues to be an issue. We've discussed it last time around children and youth, but it's children, youth, adults. It's not just specific to one population. So one of the things Kneehill Regional FCSS has been trying to do over the last year and a bit is connect and get people trained for the Rural Mental Health Project. So at this point, we have 6 volunteers trained. So we have someone from Carbon-Acme, Linden, Three Hills, Trochu, and Wimborne as community animators, just to really try and facilitate some conversation and community engagement around mental health in rural Alberta. So there's not going to be tons of money that goes with that, but really just trying to help the community engage in those discussions, reduce some of the stigma, talk about other things that we can do around those issues. On a positive note, last year we had a practicum student who wanted to do some creative expression with youth. And then we had an overwhelming number of youth register for it. And then she wasn't comfortable with meeting in person. So then one of our staff kind of created a program to do, and did it in Three Hills and in Carbon at this point. And so just giving them a way to express themselves and through art. And we just really found some really positive outcomes through that. And then we have kind of moved that into, we're always looking for evidence-based programs. If someone has done all the research and evidence before, it's just much easier to engage in programs like that. So one of our staff did an Think About It program for junior high kids from October till May, and we really seen some real connections to sense of belonging and some ability to express themselves better and enhance coping skills. So we are kind of jumping on that bandwagon with the new position that the 6 municipalities have partnered with FCSS for the next 3 years to enhance services and support to children, youth, and families. And so she is already starting the version of that called Magnificent Marvelous Me. We're piloting in Encroachment and Kneehill starting this week. And then she's got a full roster in all of the communities over the summer. And that would be targeting kids 6 to 12-ish. At this point, and then she's got a few teen initiatives underway, but yeah, so she has hit the ground running to try and jump on the bandwagon of the successes we were seeing. So we talked about last time that we are seeing an increase in suicide risk assessments in our children and youth. So as much as that's alarming, the good news is that we are finding that the youth and their families are saying that they're feeling supported, getting the supports that they need, and are feeling supported around those issues. So that is the good news, is that we are connecting with them and and they're feeling supported, so that's important. So, and lastly, I will just say thank you for that, your support of FCSS over the last 24 years now, and then really going the extra mile for that 3 years in funding that we've hired the Kneehill Community Support Coach, and I'm really hopeful that that will really support our children and youth and families in enhancing their skills. And with any luck, she can work her way right out of a job. So.
You neglected to mention the support from Golden Hills that we got on that position as well, and so we are grateful for that also. So.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? Councillor McGee.
All the questions I had, you've answered in your things so far, but I wanted to ask you if I could arrange a time to get more information on the employment accessibility issues that you're seeing. I'm on the Central Alberta Economic Development Group, and we have identified that as a concern too, and so I would like to leverage that a bit and see if I can make something shake. So
that would be awesome.
So I'll contact you to set up a time to get more information.
Yeah, I think anything we can do around that would be fabulous.
Great.
Thanks, Councillor McGee.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment that I'm disappointed that the province keeps pulling funding from programs that are really, really working. I really appreciate the passion that you have to make it work, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Christie.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Boy, look at that, we're letting you off easy. It's not quite like a board meeting, eh?
Yes. Yeah, I have a board chair who,
Yeah.
can keep me on my toes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Shelley. We very much appreciate the work that FCSS is doing, and your enthusiasm is contagious, and we appreciate that as well. So thank you for being with us today, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. And thank you guys for your time. I know you're busy. I appreciate it.
All right. We have another delegation in 5 minutes, but I think we probably have time to deal with 4.1, which is the Three Hills Cruise water truck request. So, Mr. Zier, if you want to.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Mike.
Mike Sear, Transportation Department, presenting agenda item 4.1, the Three Hills Cruise water truck request. So as you'll see in your package there, we have a request submitted from the Three Hills Cruise Committee President Tyler McLim, requesting the county to supply water truck, labor, and the actual water for the Three Hills Cruise event this weekend, or this coming up weekend on June 4th. Just some history, this cruise is an annual event held by the committee. It involves both a car show within the town as well as drag racing out at the Three Hills Airport. The request here is for water to supply, to fill plastic barriers that they have along the edge of the drag strip there, just for safety reasons. You see in the request form here that they typically have private contributors supplying this water. Due to unforeseen events, they're unable to have those suppliers at this time. We have looked at the ability for the county to supply this. We have one tanker truck that we use primarily for dust control, calcium chloride, which is actually currently in operation as we speak. Looking at the site and talking to a few of the operations crews, we are able to utilize that trailer for this service. A little bit of modification, but it would be doable, basically with a one-day commitment by the county, 8 hours of staff time. You can see in the analysis there about $200 worth of actual water charges, and then just some miscellaneous costs for it. So I have in the recommended motion to accept his information. I think probably the committee would appreciate a response on the request for this.
So am I understanding you then to say, Mr. Zier, that we would go ahead and cooperate with the request?
So through the chair, that is council's decision. I'm just providing the information that we would have the ability to do it. It's up to council if they feel like they would like to contribute that to the Three Hills Cruise Committee.
So would we would have the ability to break away from the dust suppression in order to do that? We could find the time.
That's correct, yeah. We would be able to. I've talked with the crews there. We've focused it around a certain set time frame here. Obviously, it would extend out the application an extra day with that, so something to consider for council too.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor McGee.
And the cost of this would just come out of your regular operating budget?
That's correct.
Reeve Whitstock.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're looking at $2,135. That was going to be charged back to the cruise committee, was it? I'm a little lost here.
So through the chair, the request is that this service be donated from the county to the Three Hills Committee. There wasn't any indication of payment in this request letter here.
Okay, so we're fully understanding that this request is a donation on the part of county if we choose to go ahead. Any other questions? Reeve Whitstock.
Are we also cutting the grass there, or they've got someone else coming in to cut the grass? Do you know, Mike?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe for the last little bit they've had somebody else coming in. I know that they've looked at getting a price from us, but I don't believe that that's been effective for them.
Okay, so the only thing they're actually asking for is the water tanks to be filled, or barricades to be filled.
Any other thoughts, questions? Councillor Forbes.
So if we don't support this, does this still take place, I guess is my question. Do you know?
So the question is, what would the impact be if we could not do this? Would they be able to find someone else?
Yeah, and through the chair, I have had a couple conversations with Tyler, the applicant here, but I haven't spoke what their backup plan would be.
Okay. Reeve Whitstock.
Oh, sorry, I'm putting on my glasses. Well, I guess their backup plan is us.
We are the backup plan.
Sounds like it.
So what's the wish of council? Councilor Christie.
I'll make the motion that we supply the water and staff to fill their water barriers.
Okay, so we do have a motion then that we supply the truck operator and water to cooperate with the cruise committee and provide them with water. Any further questions, discussion? Are you ready to vote? I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that looks like it's carried unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zier.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to 3.2. We have a delegation from Strategic Steps and Mr. Ian McCormick. So I'm trusting that he is online with us. Good morning, Ian. Can you hear us?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I am online, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I guess I'll turn it over to you then, and if you would make your presentation, please.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I'll probably be quite brief in this as well, because I spoke with you a few weeks ago when you were looking at a draft of your strategic plan. Since that time, we have made the changes that you requested. We have gone through a graphic design layout phase. What you see in front of you now, or what's up on the screen, is the final result of all of that, of course. So the contributions that council had made on the advice of some of your senior managers as well as here. So some of the significant differences that you may notice between last time and this time, of course, is the layout. The second big one is around priorities. We had originally provided you with a set of high priority, meaning important and timely strategies at the beginning of your strategic plan. You suggested we move it to the end. So that's where it appears now. So just as a real high level, Mr. Chair, you reviewed your vision, your mission, and your values. We defined those. We actually made some changes to the definitions based on your input from the last time we got together. You have a series of 16 goals within this particular strategic plan. Those goals are broken down or themed, if you like, into 4 what we call pillars or groupings of them. And the 4 groupings essentially speak, and this was in your RFD as well, speak around building and maintenance of infrastructure. They talk about economic resilience and diversity. They talk about maximizing quality of life, and then they also talk about providing effective leadership to the county as well. So within all those, then there are also a series of strategies or tactics that fall below the level of the goal, and these are the place that the work of county council then transfers to the work of management. And the strategies then become the link between the strategic plan and operational or corporate plans that individual county departments may have, or the county overall may have as well. Acknowledging too that their plan will include items that are not associated with the change that you see in the strategic plan, but more so in keeping the county running on a regular basis too. So what our suggestion, again, at the end, or recommendation at the end of all of this, is this needs to be a roadmap through the course of this term and beyond. So even though that you have identified your series of goals and pillars and priorities here, that there needs to be review on that happening too. So of the 5 items, for example, you have suggested are high priorities for 2022, 2023. These need to come before council on a fairly regular basis. I think you had said 2 or 3 times a year as a check-in on progress. But that you have a global review of the plan and a reevaluation of your priorities kind of about this time every year. so that so that then your administration can start to build your following year's budget with this. So without wanting to take up a ton of your time, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to respond to questions or comments about this. It is still a draft, of course, until council provides its approval of it. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Are there any questions from council? Councillor McGee.
Beautiful work. I really appreciate the vocabulary but I have to say that I am quite concerned about the readability of the layout. I'm quite passionate about the fact that we need to have a very simple to read document that is easily transferable from an iPhone or to an actual hard copy page. And my impression is that we have a lot of emphasis on photos as opposed to what is important to us. I think this is an extremely important message for our residents to get, and the information is not as beautifully dominant in the document as is the color. And I also would like to see the font larger and to eliminate any really light gray font. I find that difficult. Most of our readers are in the 55+ zone. And as one of them, I find myself getting tired reading that type of document, and I want this to be one that takes very little effort to read. That's a suggestion, if I could say. And secondly, if staff could go over with pictures with you as well. The one is not actually of Kneehill County. I really want only Kneehill County pictures, not any of our villages.
Thank you, Councillor, through Chair. We can certainly work with your administration on this. Of course, there are two parts to it. One is, do we have the content right? And hopefully we do, because you have provided your input on that. The second is recognizing that this is the first time you have seen it in a laid out format. So thank you, Councillor.
Any other questions or comments? One of the things that I might reinforce that Councillor McGee has already said is when you print this document and read it, and whether that was the intent or not, the lightness of the fonts really make it difficult to read. And being somewhat challenged visional-wise, the size of that font sometimes does as well. I know that we have a lot of information that we're trying to place into this document, and it's difficult to include all that and then have 65+ friendly print. And so I recognize that. But I think the comments that Councillor McGee made regarding the intensity of the way the print comes out of the document is not there. And so if that could be enhanced, it certainly would be helpful.
Certainly, and another comment to this, Mr. Chair, is the version you have is a low resolution version as well. The high resolution version that goes to print is actually literally 85 to 90 megabytes. This is 3 megabytes. So you will have found too that the resolution, if you printed it out in this version, would not have been great. And we just do that because it's 85 megabytes is tough to transmit by email, but we'll get it to you eventually. If you're good with content and just need to tweak layout, Mr. Chair, I will certainly take direction of council to do that if that's the will of council. And we can certainly work on that if council's okay with it the way it is, wants to approve it, and let your CAO and I have a bit of and your communications folk have a little bit of a go at it to move it forward. We can certainly do that too. It's completely up to you.
Okay. Any comments on the content? I think from what I saw in there, it mostly pretty much reflected what we had discussed. So I don't think there's a lot of issue with content, Ian. So. This is your chance, folks. Any comments? Okay, Councillor McGee.
I just want to reiterate, let's remember who the reader is. The reader is someone who's critical about what we are spending money on. So we need to be sure to have a document that looks readable and minimalized in cost.
Okay. All right, if there are no other comments or questions, I think, Ian, you have our feedback at this point. We look forward to, I guess, the more enhanced version and some slight tweaks. And so we would thank you for your time. Is there anything else that you need from us at this point?
Thank you. No, Mr. Chair, I'm quite happy to work with your management and communications folks on changes to this as you see fit. If we're good with content, we just need to change layout a bit, we'll do that.
Okay, I think that's what I'm hearing is it's mostly layout focused. The content seems to be good. So we'll thank you for your time and for being with us today. And we look forward to version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever it happens to be. So thank you, Ian, and appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, does anybody want to break? Or are we good to continue? Boy, this is a focused group today. Good. I said, does anyone want a break? And he disappeared. Well, let's take a short break until we get Jerry back. Let's take a recess for 5 to 10 minutes, and hopefully we'll get...
I'm still here. I don't know what happened.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so we're not going to take a break then. We're going to go on to 5.1.1, which is a road closure. Ms. Keever, welcome.
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready, Deanna.
Right. We've received an application from an applicant to close an undeveloped road allowance north of the portion of northwest of 213026 west of the 4th, Plan 9310847, Block A. The landowners, Carl Westerman and Bobby Bray Westerman, have approached the county in their desire to purchase the undeveloped road allowance directly north of their acreage, which is portion northwest of 213026, Plan 9310847, Block A. They wish to build an accessory building west of their existing yard site. Due to the odd shape of their acreage, the flattest and most developable area would be within the undeveloped road allowance. The undeveloped road allowance will never be developed into a road as Township 30-4 diverts around this parcel of land due to the uneven topography. The portion of road was known as the Linden West Project when it was paved in 2003. This road already has a 100-foot right-of-way. Closure of the proposed undeveloped road allowance will not interfere with legal access to any other parcels. Should council and subsequently the Minister of Transportation approve the closure, it would be requested of the applicant to survey, purchase, and consolidate the portion of the road allowance into the existing acreage. This will increase the acreage from the existing 17.66 acres to approximately 22.5 acres. Council has approved similar situations in Wimborne and Hesketh, but it didn't involve as much land as this. Road closures are governed by the Municipal Government Act, Section 22, which states that a road must be closed by bylaw, must be advertised, and must be approved by the Minister of Transportation prior to receiving second reading. Notices will be sent to adjacent landowners within a mile and referral agencies. These referral agencies notified will include the Kneehill County departments. This process is similar to a public hearing for a land use bylaw amendment. A person who claims to be deemed affected must be given an opportunity to be heard by council. Cost to the applicant will be as follows. Application fee as set out by council, which is $1,000. All costs associated with the transfer of land, which will include the survey, the transfer documents, registration, etc. And there will be an appraisal fee. Kneehill County will request an appraisal from our assessment department, but it will be up to the applicant. He can either use whatever Kneehill County comes up with or hire an outside appraiser. And then it will be the purchase, they will have to purchase the cost of the road allowance. Cost to the county will only include the referrals, advertisements, and hosting the public hearing. Once the undeveloped road allowance has been consolidated and registered with land titles, there will be no ongoing annual operating costs.
Okay. Are there questions? So this is west of Linden, correct?
Exactly, yeah. So right, straight, directly west of Linden, and the road curves, I don't know if you
Yes.
did that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the road allowance directly north
So-
of that parcel.
That acreage is on the north side of that curve, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah. you'll see more on the next council item.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions? Councillor Cunningham?
So just to confirm then, the purchase cost is determined by the appraisal fee?
Yes,
Appraisal?
Yep.
And that can either be done by our appraisers or one that they choose?
exactly.
Okay.
So whichever. We've already talked to our assessment department, and he's kind of given us a ballpark already. So they are aware of what the cost of the land is possibly going to be.
Right, so then you guys have an idea, so like if it came in very different from what?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no questions, what's the wish of council? Councillor McGee, I saw your hand first.
I'd like to move that we give first reading of bylaw 1856 for the road closure of the portion of undeveloped road allowance between the south half of 283026 west of 4 and north of the portion of northwest 213026 west of 4, Plan 9310847, Block A.
Okay, now that we have the motion in the record, Reeve Whitstock, did you have a question?
No, I was actually gonna make the motion, but that's fine. I realize that 17 acres is a fair chunk of land, but in this case, it's tough to develop anything on that particular chunk of land, so.
Yeah, it is a relatively topographically challenged piece of land.
It is. And in some pictures that I'll show you on the next council item, you can see, I believe, like the undeveloped road allowance is even like on the side of a hill. So,
Yeah, you could use it for grazing, but it would be difficult to fence, to put it lightly.
So we're talking approximately 5 acres of land that would be taken out of the road allowance and added to the titles. So we have a motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? That's carried unanimously. Okay, we have one other item of business related to this, and that's to set a public hearing. Councillor Christie.
I'll make the motion to set the public hearing for June the 14th, 2022 at 10 a.m. as per section 22 and 230 of the Municipal Government Act.
Okay, so we have a motion to set the public hearing for June 14th at 10 a.m. Any questions, discussion? If not, all those in favor? And that also is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, and so we were going to go on to 5.1.2, encroachment agreement on a portion of the Northwest 213026 west of 4, and all those other numbers and letters. So, Ms. Geaver, whenever you're ready, Deanna.
all right. So these same applicants, Carl Westerman and Bobby Bray Westerman, they are the owners of this property that was just stated, located on the portion of northwest of 213026 west of the Pour, Plan 9310847, Block A. They have applied to close the adjacent undeveloped road allowance north of their property. Unfortunately, this can be a very long process. The landowners have asked if Kneehill County would allow them to place a temporary accessory building on a portion of the undeveloped road allowance. Due to the lay of their land, the developable area is limited, and they would like to construct a tarp building to store hay. This building would not have a permanent foundation, just pegged. An encroachment agreement with Kneehill County would allow them to place their accessory building within a portion of the road allowance. Once the road is closed, the encroachment agreement could be removed. Administration sees no disadvantages of allowing an encroachment agreement. It is unlikely the road closure will not be successful if council is supportive. The landowners will still be required to apply for a development permit for the temporary structure. The encroachment agreement will stay in effect until the portion of land involved in the road closure is owned by Carl Westerman and Bobby Bray Westerman. Praise should be given to the landowners for making this request prior to the building, as often this is not the case.
We acknowledge their attention to the detail.
Yes. And I do have some photos here, if I can,
We love photos, you know that.
yes. All right, so this is, I just have to get my bearings. So this is looking, we're actually on the road, but we're looking directly north. And from when I look at the aerial, like those trees that we see, they're kind of on the adjacent, they're on the north quarter. And so your undeveloped road allowance is actually on the side of that hill. This is more at the yard site. It is quite limited, and the picture at the bottom here is kind of where they were wishing to put their building. This, right by this power pole and this, the stake that has been put, that is the edge of their property. So all these trees are in the undeveloped road allowance. And again, like their house is even close, as you can see by the picture to the right. Those, what's been staked there, because they have actually had it surveyed just recently. And those stakes are, that's their north property line.
They are close.
Yeah.
There is not a lot of room on that piece of property to have any buildings, really.
No, no.
Any questions, comments? Okay, if there are no questions for the planner, what's the wish of council? Reeve Whitstock.
I would move that council authorize administration to enter into an encroachment agreement with Kneehill County and the landowners of Plan 9310847 Block A to allow development of a temporary accessory building within the undeveloped road allowance adjacent to the north property line.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to authorize entering into an encroachment agreement. Any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that also is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Keeper.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break. And then we'll come back to talk about the Horseshoe Canyon pilot project. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break. So it's 9:36, and I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And we are going to make a change in our agenda. The delegation from Accurate Assessment is here, and so rather than waiting till 10, we are going to just bump our agenda and move on to the delegation. So welcome, gentlemen. We will introduce ourselves, and then we'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then Troy will let you take it from there. So Councillor Forbes, if you wish, please start.
Carrie Phobes, Division 4.
Laura Michelle Cunningham, Division 5.
I'm Ken King, Division 7.
Wade Christie, and I'm in Division 6.
Faye McGee, Division 1.
Morning, gentlemen. Jerry Whitstock, Division 3.
I hope you're somewhere warm.
He is.
I got the air conditioner on.
So welcome, and Troy, if you want to introduce your group to council, and then if you take it away, please.
Certainly, thank you. My name is Troy Birtles. I am your appointed assessor with Accurate Assessment. To my left, Chris Meadows, and his left, Sean Barrett. Thanks again for allowing us to come and present the assessment to you. The purpose of today is to discuss changes year over year from last year's taxable assessment to this year. I know that some of you have seen our presentation in the past, and for those of you that have, it's going to seem a little bit repetitive, but for those that haven't, I want to go through some of the early parts of our presentation in a little bit more detail so you have a better understanding who we are and what we do for you. So our company is one of a few private companies in the province that provides assessment services to municipalities. And we are proud to say we just celebrated our 25th anniversary as a company here a couple of weekends ago. We took the staff and families out to Jasper and spent a few days in the mountains and enjoyed the beautiful weather and scenery out there. So we're very proud of that. You can see from the map on the screen there that we represent a significant amount of the province, ranging from smaller towns up to mid-sized cities and rural municipalities. Of course, Kneehill County being one of those. Head office is located in Sherwood Park. We have a couple of sub-offices, one located in Whitecourt and one in Warburg. I myself am actually located out of Whitecourt, so I had my alarm set for 4:20 this morning to get up, make the trek down.
Lucky you.
Yeah, nothing new in the life of assessment, but all good. So our municipal breakdown, as I mentioned earlier, town, cities, we have 17 rural municipalities in the province, as well as we do the assessments for all 8 Métis settlements as well. This is a big slide for us, basically I think for those of you that have seen us many times understand this, but for the new members of council, we like to think of ourselves as your trusted advisor for all things assessment. If you have any questions about assessment, we hope that you would come to us rather than, solicit an answer that might not be the right one, so to speak, especially regarding assessment. Another proud stat on this slide is 400 plus years of combined experience within our company. That's what you get when a company is in existence for as long as we've been. Moving on to the next slide. So I introduced myself and Chris Meadows. We are the 2 people that you're going to see the most in the municipality. In fact, Chris will be more than likely the one that you'll see in your yard, or your ratepayers will see in his yard. So if you ever get a phone call that there's this weird white pickup driving around with Kneehill County decals on, I don't know who this guy is, it's probably Chris. And we encourage your ratepayers to make the call to the county to confirm that who we are is, we're legitimate doing what we're supposed to be doing we don't just sneak in, snap, snap, and sneak out. We want to make sure that they know who we are. Especially in today's climate with everything going on with the world. So just before we get into the numbers, I'm going to let Chris talk about the numbers, but quickly for those of you that are new on council, just a quick and dirty rundown of what assessment is. So it is the municipality's way to generate revenue. So we provide an assessment on every property. You sit down and calculate what your budget for the year is going to be, how much you need to operate as a municipality. You divide one by the other, and essentially that's your tax rate. So that tax rate gets applied to each individual assessment, and it equates to a property owner's tax bill. Of course, we are legislated by the Municipal Government Act as to how we are to assess certain property. Some property types are regulated, meaning there's a strict formula that must be followed to calculate the assessment, and some assessments are not regulated, and that's the majority of them, to be honest. Your property that you live in is not a regulated assessment, so it is based on market value. Except for if your property is a farm property, then part of it is regulated and part of it is market value. So all of those details are things that you don't need to worry yourself about because you hire us to do your assessments. But it is often the reasons why your ratepayers might have some questions about it. For example, they'll get their assessment notice and say, what does this farmland number mean? Like, my farmland is worth way more than that. Well, your farmland isn't assessed at market value because it's a regulated property type as per the legislation. So the easy way to explain it to a person that has a property where they live on it and they farm it is the first 3 acres is assessed at market value, and all the buildings are assessed at market value. So if you can imagine what the value of that 3 acres and buildings is worth, that's what your assessment should come close to. But then if you're a farmer, your farm shop is assessed but not taxed. So the neighbor across the road that might only have a 3-acre site that isn't a farmer, that does have a shop on it, is going to pay more taxes than his farm neighbor. That's just part of assessment in Alberta. Legislation tells us that's how we have to do it, so we must follow the legislation. So as you can see on the slide, and I'll let Chris get into this, but it's broken down into several different categories, and these categories, for all intents and purposes, are outlined in the legislation, and that's why we've segregated them this way. So I'll pass it on to Chris to go through these numbers with you.
Okay. Thanks, Troy. I think everybody can probably hear me. So here we have just the comparison between 2020 and 2021 assessment. The residential assessment saw a 5% increase, roughly 27 million. That'll be broken down through new construction as well as market change, and we'll break that down more in a future slide. The non-res saw a 7% increase, or 6.8 million. The dip assessment was down 8 million, and the linear saw a $150,000 decline. Dip, Sean will discuss in further about that, and the linear is done by the government of Alberta, so we can provide some insight on that, but we don't have the full details there. And as Troy said, farmland is regulated, so that doesn't change much at all. In fact, this year it was only $2,700 change. Farmland would change just basically based on if some properties were subdivided or that kind of stuff. That would be the reason for a change there. Exempt saw a 23% increase, roughly 57 million. Majority of that was the Centera building that was built. That is an exempt property. And there were some other major farm projects that went on. So that's where most of the exempt property saw the increase.
Troy, you gonna go to the next slide?
Well, where's my mouse? Oh, I think you could just use the wheel.
So here we have the, just a breakdown of the last 5 years in bar graph. The residential and non-res has been slightly increasing year over year. You can see that the dip has been on a bit of a decline. Farmland, as you can see there, is pretty flat, and a small increases as well in the exempt. The total assessment of the last 5 years. So 2017, 2018, we saw an increase, and then the previous 2 years, or 2 years after that, quite a bit of a decline. But then again, 2021, we saw a pretty good increase, so hopefully that will continue. Taxable assessment change by percentage. So this would be ratepayers, their properties. A majority will see very little change, 60% with minimal. And then slightly more because of obviously the increase overall. So a few properties there see about a 10% increase. And here again, kind of the same thing, but just in actual dollars. So again, 65% are going to see their whole assessment change within $1,000. So won't be much impact to a majority of the people. New roles and permit comparison. So last year we saw 15 new res, non-res roles added. And development permits were at 75. So a bit of a decrease from the previous year, but still pretty similar to the last 5 years. Here's just a little bit of the increase based on growth and inflation in certain areas. So here in the Three Hills area, didn't see much growth, but saw the market increase by about 1.7%. Rural North, 3.2% market change and some growth. Southwest, again, similar inflation increase and a little bit more growth down that way. Rural East saw inflation again up about 3% and not much growth there. And the hamlets actually should be a 9.8% increase, not a decrease. So that's an error there that we made, unfortunately. But a good error in the case that it's actually an increase and not a decrease. So inflation quite a bit higher in the hamlets, and growth was up there as well. And that's just basically the hamlets assessments aren't quite as high as the rural property. So when there's that inflation of 7% is probably maybe like a $10,000 or $15,000 increase in the value rather than like a $100,000 increase kind of thing. And so the total 5.4%, inflation 3.6, and growth 1.8. And so that first slide that I commented on, we had the $27 million increase in the residential, and this is where it's broken down. 8.5 million in new construction and 19 million in market change. So every year I do what we call our global re-inspections, which I usually do in March and April. So in 2022, actually I've already completed those inspections. So we do 20% re-inspection every year of the county. And then again, in the winter time, I'll be back out to do another inspection cycle where we do the whole municipality, check on new permits or permits from last year that either didn't get completed or weren't started. And if there's any sales information that we need to confirm, we'll be out throughout the whole county doing that, usually in January. So going forward, again, continue, but actually completed the global inspections this year. So we're done with that, and then continue to review the new construction. And the last line there, just with COVID, there was some we negative effects weren't as bad as maybe originally predicted. We'll continue to monitor going forward. And yeah. I don't know if there's any questions that they want to ask me and Troy now or wait till after.
Sean will talk about the industrial in a second here, but we'll field any questions you have for sure.
That was kind of a quick overview, but.
Are there any questions? Counselor Cunningham.
So could you just explain a little bit more about the Sunterra being an exempt property?
Yes, so the legislation I spoke about earlier tells us how we are to assess property. If a property meets the definition of farming, which is raising, producing, and selling an agricultural commodity, then that portion of the property is deemed to be farm. And if it's a farm building, it's exempt. So think of it, there's a number of different examples. I could be a farmer where I cultivate several quarters of land and I got a building on my property that I keep my combine and my tractor in, I do my service to my equipment. That's a farm building. And the land where I cultivate is farm because I'm raising, producing, and selling the commodity. And then the quarter right beside it, let's say, is not farmed. It's just, I got my camper parked out there. There's a creek running through it, and I like to enjoy my weekends. It's a recreation property. That property does not meet the tests of farm status and would be assessed at its market value and taxed at its market value. So the Sunterra property is essentially a great big greenhouse. So they raise, produce, and sell ag commodity. So yes, we've got a 30 million plus assessment that's exempt. And it's not a decision from council, it's not a decision of us, we check off all the things that happen at the property, and does it meet, does it say it's exempt or taxable? And it's not a gray area where some can be and some can be, it's a farm building classified as exempt.
Sales area there or anything, right?
Yeah, if they had a market area where the public could come in and buy, like a grocery store, well, that portion would be taxable because in that area, they're not actually growing the thing. But this facility, they're growing the thing. Another example could be an intensive livestock operation, a feedlot. Doesn't matter if it's cattle or pigs or whatever. It's essentially the same thing. There's a major business going on there, but it's a farm business, and the legislation in place right now says that that's exempt.
Councilor Christie.
I guess our big grain handling facilities are in that exempt area. At what threshold of commercial work out of those buildings would cross the threshold?
So you're talking like a Grains Connect?
No, I'm talking about the grain dryer systems and the
On-farm ones.
on-farm facilities that are there.
Right, so a commercial seed cleaner, portions of it would be a taxable assessment. But if he's also a farmer, which most of them are, then portions of it would be exempt based on his farm, raising, producing, and selling an ag commodity. But if he's buying my wheat and cleaning it and selling it to Chris for seed, that's a business, and it's a taxable business. But yeah, so if it's a farmer that happens to have a grain dryer that's doing your neighbor a favor, well, no, it's not. We wouldn't go in and say you got to pay commercial tax on that. That would be virtually impossible.
Okay, I wasn't using my mic, but thank you. That answers my question, so thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this point, or are we ready to move on? Perfect. You got one more,
I
Councilor
got one
Christie?
more. On the linear tax reevaluation of the shallow bed methane wells, the provincial government dropped 35%. Where does that show up on this graph? Is that in 1919 or
So that would be within your linear assessment. So each year, the provincial government, so Alberta Municipal Affairs, creates your linear assessment, and that's done through legislated and regulated rates. So those rates would be embedded within your linear assessment. So what you speak to is already in your linear assessment. I will speak further to what's called a linear tax holiday. I'm going to speak to that in a couple more slides, and that will give you some more insight into what's been implemented in the absence of an assessment model review, and then I'll tell you what we can expect moving forward. So I'll touch on that real quick here. But that's an excellent question.
Okay, thank you.
So switching gears a little bit, we're going to get into speaking about industrial assessment. So this is the industrial assessment team at Accurate. So there's 8 individuals total. Each of us have AMAA beside our name. So does Chris Meadows. So does Troy Birtles. So that is our professional designation in assessment in Alberta. It takes a combination of education plus work experience to get that designation. So we're quite proud of the fact that all of our team members have that. We perform the assessment services for various municipalities, and we do it in a different way. So for Kneehill County, we provide assessment services to non-DIP industrial properties. So we do not perform the assessment services for linear, and we do not perform the assessment services for DIP. So DIP would be your typical oil and gas surface improvements, your well sites, your compressor stations, your batteries and gas plants. Historically, we did perform the assessment services in Kneehill County on the DIP, and we did that since about 2014. So from 2014 to 2020, this team performed those assessments of the oil and gas properties. Then there was a change, a little bit of a shakeup in the assessment world, where some municipalities had their industrial assessments, or DIP, integrated within Alberta Municipal Affairs. So Alberta Municipal Affairs now performs the assessment of linear and the assessment of DIP within Kneehill County. There's still some complex industrial type facilities, such as your Grains Connect would be one perfect example, and I'll speak to that on the next slide. So we do still perform assessment services for the municipality if there are facilities that are not designated industrial property, but still have some form of complexity to them. We do still perform DIP assessment services, just not in Kneehill County as it was integrated. So we do work on behalf of 9 different municipalities still performing the DIP assessment services. We actually perform inspections and assessments for about 35% of the total DIP properties in the province of Alberta. So we still have quite a large range of properties that the industrial team looks after, but that's the history in Kneehill County. But I can speak a little bit to linear, and I can speak a little bit to DIP just because of my past experiences, but I just want to mention that Alberta Municipal Affairs performs those assessments for Kneehill County. So non-designated industrial property. So these would be facilities that we look after ourselves. So these are properties that are not regulated by the Alberta Energy Regulator, the Canadian Energy Regulator, or the Alberta Utilities Commission. If these properties were regulated by the AER, the CER, or the AUC, then they would become under the umbrella of DIP. So these properties that are not designated can be your grain terminals, your meat processing. We have a Bitcoin mining operation in the municipality. There was talks about a future MDF facility that hasn't broke ground or got final investment decision yet. However, these types of facilities that you see up there are not regulated by a provincial regulator, and they're not included in DIP, so we still perform those assessments. But what did happen to the dip? So even though we didn't perform the dip assessment, I'll still go over it as it's a very large part of your assessment base. So in 2017, we saw the last increase, and then specifically in 2021, we saw a very minor decrease. It's only about 3%. I do lots of these presentations across the province, and there are some more significant decreases in rural municipalities than 3% to your dip. So fortunately, in Kneehill County, there is some drilling activity and some new capital investment by some of the oil and gas producers. So that's a very positive thing to see, because each year there's annual depreciation that affects your assessments. So you need activity and new well drilling and new facility projects to help offset some of those losses, and also offset losses from wells that may be shut in because they're not economical anymore. But as we've seen these higher commodity prices, we've seen lots of activity within some of the municipalities that we perform assessment services for. So moving into 2022, don't have a crystal ball, but it's nice to see that there is activity in the area. Some municipalities have no activity, but fortunately, just geographically where we are, there's some pockets of oil that are quite attractive to some producers, and so there is some of that activity. So now what's happening in the world of designated industrial property and what's going to happen moving forward? So this goes back a little bit in history. So a couple years ago, there was an attempt at an assessment model review. And this assessment model review was for wells, pipelines, and machinery and equipment. So wells and pipelines are under your linear assessment. Machinery and equipment would be your dip assessment, your oil and gas facilities. This assessment model review, it didn't receive consensus by stakeholders, and there's going to be quite large impacts to rural municipalities. The RMA did a information package for municipalities to show what these impacts might be if the model review was implemented. So ultimately in 2020, Minister, I believe it was Allard at the time, announced that they were canceling that assessment model review, not implementing any of the scenarios, but instead they would be implementing some short-term initiatives. And there was 3 of them, and they're on this next slide. So one was the elimination of the well drilling equipment tax. From my understanding, this is a permanent elimination of this. Some of the others below are for a certain amount of time. However, the well drilling equipment tax, from my understanding, was permanently eliminated by the provincial government. Low producing wells, so a 3-year assessment reduction on low producing wells. This will be applied to the 2021 to 2024 tax year. So any impact from low producing wells is embedded within your current linear assessment. However, the one I really want to focus on is a tax holiday on new wells and pipelines. So I mentioned that we have some drilling activity in the municipality. We have some capital investment. Well, one of the initiatives is that for any new wells and any new pipelines constructed in the municipality, they have a tax holiday from 2022 tax, which is this year's taxation, all the way to the 2024 tax year. So in Kneehill County, your linear assessment, it was pretty much status quo. I think Chris mentioned that it had a very slight decrease of $100,000. However, there was $8.2 million of assessment that was included in this tax holiday. So on your assessment this year, on your linear assessment, what you do not see is an extra $8.2 million of assessment. So the provincial government provides a document to assessors and municipalities each year identifying these new wells and these new facilities. So $8.2 million won't be taxed for 2022, 2023, or 2024. However, next year, in 2023, that number is going to increase because that 8.2 million just reflects the activity and the drilling and the pipeline construction that occurred in 2021. So next year, we're going to have on top of that another amount added to the tax holiday as we go through all of these 3 years. So it kind of grows exponentially. So if we have the same level of activity that we had last year continue for the next 3 years, the total potential tax holiday would be about 49 million in assessment over those 3 years. So the intent of the tax holiday was to incentivize capital investment and jobs and the economy. And whether it's done that specifically, I'm not sure. I think commodity prices ultimately trump the new wells and pipelines tax holiday decision, but it is something just to be, for rural municipalities, just to be cognizant about that as the assessment model review is not implemented, there are still other initiatives that were placed onto assessments within the province.
Just before you go on, Sean, if I could interrupt for a minute.
Yes, sir.
So the 2021, the $8 million plus that we're talking about, we'll see 3 years of depreciation before it actually hits the tax roll as well, correct?
That's correct.
So although it might be assessed at $8+ million now, in 2024, when it's taxable, will it be at a much lower value?
I'm not sure the exact amount of depreciation for 3 years on linear property, but you are correct in that assessment in 2022 will be different than when it is assessed in 2024 and then able to be taxed in 2025. It will be 3 years older. Yeah. So you're very much correct in that statement.
That depreciation amount will be insignificant, though.
Well, it's less significant than the 8 million plus that's missing from the roll today, right? So that tax holiday has much greater significance than the depreciation, but it's still, that depreciation is ongoing and will affect the ultimate end amount.
Yes, and then in 2025, if we had a crystal ball, what will happen is all of the amounts that were under the holiday and not assessed and not taxed for those 3 years will be taxed in 2025. They won't be back taxed for 3 years, but it just means in 2025 on your linear, everything that was not taxed will appear. So 2025 will be an interesting year when it all comes on the municipality's assessment.
Councillor Christie.
On that linear tax, when it's assessed, is it assessed at a depreciated value or a market value?
So linear property, as well as machinery and equipment, is not assessed at market value. It is a regulated form of assessment. So just like how Troy spoke about farmland, farmland is regulated rates, and these are rates that are prescribed by different guidelines that are instituted by the government of Alberta. But I do want to back up to the slide before and note the bottom bullet where it says municipalities can expect a re-engagement of another attempt at an assessment model review for regulated property in the near future. So we have just heard from Alberta Municipal Affairs that the previous model review didn't get implemented. There were short-term initiatives. Now they're going to go through the steps to re-engage stakeholders, and there's going to be an attempt at another assessment model review for regulated property. However, what we do not know is we do not know which regulated properties. So under the umbrella of regulated property, I spoke about wells, pipelines, machinery and equipment, farmland. Well, there's also telecommunications, power generation. There's all sorts of different types of regulated property. So as we understand, they've just reached out to stakeholders to begin the process of having a consultation about how to consult. So they're having a pre-consultation with stakeholders about how are they going to consult through this assessment model review they move forward. So understandably, I'm sure that the RMA would be the best source of information for rural municipalities as we move through a potential model review. But from accurate assessment, as soon as we hear which types of regulated property and the timelines associated, we'll communicate those to all of our municipal client partners to give them heads up, because an assessment model review is something quite significant for all stakeholders.
Just refreshing to be included as a stakeholder this time around.
Right.
Not like the last time, so. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Appreciate the clarifications.
Yeah, so if there's...
Reeve Whitstock has a question, actually.
Yes, I'm not sure who to ask the question to, but does the province still have the assessment year modifier? Are they still using that?
Yes, that is correct. So there are assessment year modifiers that are set annually for regulated properties. There is still a process that that Alberta Municipal Affairs undertakes, and they set different base year modifiers each year.
Do you happen to know what it is this year?
There's many different modifiers. So there's modifiers for machinery and equipment for different types of linear property. I don't have each of them in front of me. I can get you a comprehensive chart that shows all of the modifiers and the percentage impact. Lots of them are fairly minor. One of the standouts this year, though, was railway. So railway is now a regulated property type, and I believe the modifier for railway went up 10 or 11%. So that was one of the major increases we saw this year. But for the other modifiers, I can provide yourself a comprehensive chart and show those impacts.
Well, I don't actually need to know all of them. I'm just wondering what the trend was. Stable, going up, or decreasing?
There was some increases to various modifiers, not significant. So it's
Okay.
I wouldn't say status quo, but minimal impact.
All right, thank you.
Keeping in mind that the assessment year modifiers is one of the variables included in the formula that equates to the final number. So if this model review results in changes at any point along the line, they could easily say, well, now the assessment year modifier needs to change, and it's all, it all impacts the final value. We're in a difficult spot right now because we really don't know what the model review is going to result in, and the analysis of the annual assessment year modifier either.
Yeah, I know it used to go up as the health of, I guess it would be the oil industry, oil and gas industry. If they were healthy, the assessment year modifier would go up. If they weren't healthy, then it would go down. It's just the province's way of throwing in a fudge factor, I guess.
Yeah. We'll provide Caroline with the chart, then she can pass it on. It's not a long document, it's a one-pager. It's easy to read, and you can see quite clearly.
Okay, are there any other questions? Here's your opportunity to learn all things assessment. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you so much, and you might regret offering to answer any questions going forward from me. So,
No worries.
yeah, I am a new councillor, but I'm finding that there's a lot of questions across the province. So one question that I have that's coming to me is, I do understand there's the province does have the linear tax rate for renewable energy when we've got a quarter of land that's was regulated, right? The regulated price for that, when it's being taken out of that intended use into being put into renewable, why the tax is the same. So if I've got a farmer that's farming the land and pays $400 tax, when that's taken out of agriculture production, why the tax rate is the same for that landowner?
The rate, the mill rate is the same, and that's the mill rate that you folks set. the assessment is different. To be quite honest, the farmland regulated assessment might be one of the ones reviewed under the model review. And if that is the case, we might see a $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 assessment on a farmland quarter go to $800,000 or $900,000 because that's what it will sell for. I think that would be a stretch to assume that could happen. I mean, it could happen, but it'd be a stretch to assume that it will happen. But if it did, you as a municipality would have a huge decision to make, because if you left your farmland tax rate the same, these property owners would see tax impacts that would put them out of business. But to get more to your question, so the portion of the property that isn't farmed based on raising production and sale of an ag commodity is assessed at its market value. So if you subdivide off a 5-acre piece and you want to sell it because somebody wants an acreage, for example, well, that 5 acres, if it's no longer farmed, it would be assessed at $200,000 or $300,000, whatever the value of it is. And then the tax rate that you set would be applied against that $200,000 assessment, as opposed to the $20,000 assessment assessed based on farm. There's a huge difference. Market value and farmland have nothing to do with each other in Kneehill County.
Okay, I'm just confusing myself more, but still, that doesn't, like Ken's laughing at me. Still, that landowner that has changed, that has gone away from that raising, producing, and selling of agriculture commodities still is gonna pay the same tax to Kneehill County that the neighbor next door that's farming that property is going to.
Well, if the land is no longer farmed, then it shouldn't be assessed as farmland. So if he's taking it out of production, technically, it's not farmland, then it should be assessed at market value. But the problem is nobody takes a permit, or nobody calls us and says, hey, I'm not gonna farm this anymore. So we have to come across it, we have to notice it, that it's not a farm parcel anymore. And when we find that, we certainly change it.
But there could be like a person that buys a property that isn't technically a farmer, but rents that land out to a farmer, then it would be farmland.
Yeah, in that case, it's still a farm parcel.
So just let me help with the discussion if I could. So the potential is, if this quarter of land is no longer farmed, that the assessment would go from a farmland value to a market value.
Correct.
And the tax rate that we apply would still be our mill rate for land, but it would be at a much higher value, correct?
The assessments, yeah, so your tax bill equation is assessment times tax rate.
Right.
And I believe your tax rate for residential and farmland is the same.
And
It's different.
no, it's a little bit different.
Which ones? So farmland and residential is different. Okay, so if it's a farm quarter, you'd have farmland assessment times the farm tax rate equals your tax bill. Then it comes out of farmland in this example. That would be a residential assessment multiplied by the residential tax rate would equal the taxes.
Yeah, so the acreage is at the residential tax rate, the balance of the quarter is at the farm.
Yes.
Okay, but we're not talking an acreage here, we're talking
Full
taking an
quarter, that's the
entirely
same, yeah.
full quarter out. And so the potential would be that the entire quarter would now be at a market value assessment.
Right.
Because it's not being farmed or used for agricultural production. And the tax rate that would apply would be whatever the mill rate is for that,
For residential, yeah.
for that assessment.
So the impact
Could be big.
could be huge, because like I said, farmland isn't assessed at market value, so a quarter of land, like one of the best quarters of farmland in the county might have a $30,000 or $35,000 assessment on it. That quarter will turn over for $1 million. So you take 35,000, times it by your farmland tax rate to get your farm taxes, then flip it over and take $1 million and multiply it by your residential tax rate, the difference is huge.
I appreciate that clarification, because just, because this is new to our county, the discussion has been that landowner would be paying the same tax that a farmer would be too, so I appreciate that clarification.
It would be rare, in my opinion, that a the best quarter in your county would be taken out of production.
It might be rare, but it's not that rare, so. So the actual equipment that ends up on this power generation is, would be regulated, right? So it's a power generation, so it's gonna come under linear or
Yeah,
some other.
so if we're speaking about a solar farm, so if there is a quarter of land and it's being farmed, and then of course we spoke about the farmland rate and how it's regulated. If it comes out of that and it's used for a commercial or industrial purpose, such as a solar farm, then that land goes to market value. The equipment is used for linear power generation. It's regulated by the Alberta Utilities Commission. It will be assessed by Alberta Municipal Affairs as linear property. If there's any other improvements to the land, so such as an office or a fence, etc., it's under the umbrella of DIP. So it's DIP property and the generation portion is linear property. So yes, you will receive an assessment once that is in service, depending on when. But if it's in service before October 31st of the assessment year, that's the physical condition date that's used for linear and industrial properties, then yes, that land should be switched to market and assessed as designated industrial property.
Okay, Councillor Christie.
I want to be the devil's advocate here. So I build a solar farm, it's now industrial, but then I have a commercial lease to put livestock underneath it. Does that take it back to agriculture?
Oh, so the solar panels are on uprights and there's grass growing
Underneath.
graze livestock.
Best use.
I didn't mean to really confuse you.
It is a very good question. I suppose there could be a mixed use scenario where a portion would be assessed at non-residential and a portion at farmland. I think in the whole scheme of things, there would be a far more assessment on the equipment than the land, right? So, not making it less important than it is, but you know, out of the total, small part of the total would be land. Therefore, you're not at risk. The equipment would never be farm. If that's what we're getting at, the equipment would never be farm in a solar.
So I guess what we're really saying is that you better do your homework because this is coming to a municipality near you very soon.
Yeah.
However, once the land and improvements to the land, I believe, are regulated by the Alberta Utilities Commission, it would fall under the umbrella of DIP property. I guess the challenge would be, is the land market value or is the land then farmland? However, it would still be under DIP property, I believe. However, if that assessment is created and then it's, the responsibility is that of Alberta Municipal Affairs, then we can work as agent on behalf of the municipality to ask them how that assessment's being prepared and to have discussions about how the land is treated, so to speak.
Okay, good. Thank you. Councillor McGee, did you have a question?
Okay.
No, you're good? Any other questions? If not, thank you, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Troy
very
and
much.
Chris and Sean, we appreciate your time being here with us today and for the primer on assessment. Always interesting anyway.
Yeah,
so.
good stuff. And anytime throughout the year, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for getting up so early, Troy.
No problem.
So anyone wanting a break? We're still prepared to move forward? Okay. Sounds good. All right, then we'll go back in our agenda to 5.2.1, which is the Horseshoe Canyon Pilot Branding Project. Ms. Sherwick, welcome. Anytime you're ready, Shelby.
Thank you and good morning, Council. So the item I have for you today is the Horseshoe Canyon Pilot Branding Program. So I will just go through the RFD here, and then I have just some photos as well of just some of the updated branded materials from the May 17th Committee of the Whole discussion. So background on this. So the concept of branding for Horseshoe Canyon has been presented previously as part of the Horseshoe Canyon brand identity discussion in the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan and as part of the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group's recommendations. And just there is some information, some background information there regarding the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group. So just again on that, the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group met for 7 meetings from November 2020 to March 2021. Final recommendations presented to Council in April of 2021, and the purpose of the focus group was to assist with and make recommendations to Kneehill County Council on matters related to Horseshoe Canyon, which will help guide future initiatives through the review of the Horseshoe Canyon Master Plan and its key recommendations, as well as supporting documents and data. One of the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group strategies to consider first in their recommended strategies that were presented to Council was to develop a compelling brand and logo to use in all aspects of Canyon promotions and operations and selling merchandise on site. This recommendation, along with other recommendations from the focus group, was presented to Council at the May 17th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting where that was discussed. So some discussion around this. At the May 17th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, it was moved that the committee recommends to Council to consider a pilot branding program for Horseshoe Canyon for 2022. The presented materials that I'll show here shortly incorporate Council's feedback from that discussion as provided at the May 17th COW meeting. Benefits to implementing this as a pilot include the continued implementation of the Horseshoe Canyon Focus Group's recommended strategies, exploration of further potential revenue and promotion, opportunities for the Horseshoe Canyon site, and as well exploration of establishing that brand identity at the site for potential future Horseshoe Canyon initiatives. So financial and staffing implications as noted there. So this initiative would be funded from the 2022, the existing budget under Horseshoe Canyon initiatives, and no additional staffing implications anticipated for this. So looking at just initial costs currently, the estimate would be $4,000 is what we're estimated at looking at for this initiative. However, there hasn't been any detailed exploration of inventory or price points at this time, or and some of that depends on future discussions with third parties, as was discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So that's the estimated number that we're looking at for this initiative. And then I will speak to the presented items there that incorporate Council's feedback in a moment here, but just Council options on this. That number one, that Council approves the presented Horseshoe Canyon branded items for sale by staff or by third-party operators as a pilot branding program for 2022, and that Council receives as information. I'll ask Carolyn to please bring up my PDF sheet. So some of the discussion that took place at the May 17th CAL meeting was just incorporating something that did note Kneehill County. So this is incorporates the shirts that were presented previously there. And actually, maybe if you can zoom in, Carolyn, if we could, just to show that. So yes, again, so branching off this, sorry, there we go. Yes, so again, this incorporates branching off from that overall kind of main logo that was presented. The only change that is presented here on these shirts is just that inclusion of having Kneehill County, so it's clearly identified on the shirt there. Could you please zoom out? Thanks. So I just wanted to, it was a little tough to see there, the overall. And as well, we just included some more neutral options. So again, this is just design concepts, just kind of an overview here, but I want to bring that forward to Council just to note that that inclusion of the Kneehill County, typographic statement there as a logo is included there. And as well, just a note, so this would be piloted as part of the 2022 season. And then again, a summary report would be brought back to council as part of that end of season summary report that was done similar to 2021 last year on the Horseshoe Canyon pay parking. So just providing council with an update and a summary of how the season went for 2022 again.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Questions? Any questions? Any comments? Councillor Cunningham.
Yeah, just a comment. I like that, Shelby, that you're thinking just like the pilot project for this year, because, you know, I think it would be good for us just to get an idea of how it's going to go over. So, yeah, that would be great. I know it's going to be a little tricky because probably you're looking at July probably before you get the product out.
Through the chair, so to that question, Councillor Cunningham, we're looking at July, no firm deadlines at this point, so it would just be pending discussions with, again, any potential or the interested third parties, or also supply chain issues as well, looking at that as well. So, and again, that's why just also still exploring what those inventory numbers would be, just based on those anticipated supply chain challenges.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If there are none, Councillor McGee.
Are we considering all sizes, like children's and adults, or what were you thinking of?
Through the chair, to your question, Councillor McGee, yes, looking at just a full size run, that would be the plan. And then again, some of that depends on pricing and then just conversations around inventory as well. But that would be, yes, the intent. And again, just depending on availability too.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, what's the wish of council? Councillor McGee.
I guess I have one other question first. Were you looking for us to be specific around the choices you had there on the screen, or were you wanting just showing us examples? Did you want feedback on those examples, I guess is what I'm asking.
Through the chair, no, just looking for direction just regarding the motion that's in front of council there. Those, we're just bringing forward more examples. Again, some of the color options and that type of thing will depend on just future discussions and what's available, but just want to bring back that just following the discussions at the committee of the whole meeting regarding inclusion of that Kneehill County piece on the logos.
So having said that, I would like to move that we approve the presented Horseshoe Canyon branded materials for sale by staff or by third-party operators as a pilot branding program for 2022.
Okay, so we have a motion that would move forward with a pilot project for Horseshoe Canyon on branding for 2022. Any other comment or discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So thank you very much, Ms. Sherwick, and we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, council. Thank you.
Okay, moving further down in our agenda, we'll move to agenda item 7.1. which is the Marigold Library Agreement and Schedule C. And on my material, it says it's being presented by Carolyn. Is that correct, Ms. Vanderquill?
Yes, it is.
Okay, if you would, please.
Thank you. So Kneehill County has been a member of the Marigold Library System since March 11th, 2006. Prior to that, Kneehill County residents had to pay for their library memberships. Residents of the county can access library services free of charge at any Marigold library. The libraries that are in our region include Acme, Linden, Carbon, Three Hills, and Trochu. There's also a book pickup drop-off in Torrington. So Marigold has forwarded us a newly revised Marigold agreement. The last agreement we signed was from 2008. The changes that were made to this new agreement include the ownership of property section of the agreement was changed to state that books, periodicals, and library materials transferred to a member library by Marigold will remain the property of the library or municipality rather than the Marigold Library Board. Another important change was the reference to the government of Alberta for current municipal populations. This is because the responsibility for reporting populations has recently shifted from municipal affairs to treasury, and this could change again. Language was added on page 2 and 6 of the agreement to strengthen the importance of our municipal member collaborative. Marigold exists because 43 municipalities have chosen to form a collaborative called Marigold Library System to provide affordable public library services to municipal residents. Expanded service descriptions were also added to clause 28 in the revised agreement. A statement was inserted to allow Marigold to negotiate a separate service contract with a governing entity that is not covered by the Libraries Act, such as the First Nations Reserve or Redwood Meadows, clause 41. And definitions were updated and relocated to the beginning of the agreement. A map was added to Schedule B, and there were minor wording changes throughout for consistency and clarity. Marigold also provided us with a revised Schedule C for approval. The Schedule C is an amendment to the Marigold Library Agreement that outlines the per capita levy rate for municipalities and library boards. Both the revised Marigold Agreement and Schedule C need to be signed and sent to Marigold before September 30th, 2022. Under financial and staffing implications, there's a chart there that lists the levy rate from 2018 to 2024 with the population list and the amount we've paid and how many users have used the Marigold Library System. So the council options today are to approve the Marigold Agreement and Schedule C, or number 2, direct administration for further information, or to receive for information.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments? Reeve Whitstock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I've been thinking about this Marigold system. I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. In the last couple of years, we've raised our residential mill rates to capture, whether it's been 100,000 or whatever the amount is, another 100,000 on the farmland. Linear, I think, went up a little bit this year. And I do understand that we're going to be paying 55,000 to Marigold if we continue being a Marigold member. And when I look at the membership seems to be dropping. I'm not sure where 705 comes from. I would expect students would be considered users of the Marigold system. I don't know for sure, but I don't know how many actual members we have that are using the Marigold system. I mean, if you want to use that 705 members and divide it by the 54,000 bucks, that's about 76 bucks membership per cap. And like I'm these 705 users, are they all Kneehill County users? Or are they? I'm assuming they are. But I don't know. I just have a real hard time. Keep raising rates on our residential, our non-res, our farmland, and I don't understand why we are part of this system. I guess I'm going to need more information to make a decision here, but you know, we've gone to a user pay mentality here at the county. We've done it with dust control, and maybe user pay might be the way to go about this. We could probably subsidize the users if they buy a membership. I don't know, but I know 55,000 bucks isn't a whole lot of money, but when you raise taxes to get 100,000, it shows up on your tax form. So I don't know. Internet seems to be the way to go. I don't know. Well, I think the last time I was in the library would have probably been in my school days. So
probably was a suspension.
So,
Okay,
anyway, I've just got too many questions and not enough answers for why we are being part of Marigold, I guess.
so just for clarification, if I could please, Reeve, would you like to see some kind of breakdown on the users and sort of where they're located, or how would you like to do that?
It's a good question. I need more, yeah, I guess determine whether those users are actually Kneehill County residents, maybe an age group. I don't know. I suspected that there probably are Kneehill County users, but I do not know if that 705 number is correct.
Okay, Councillor McGee first.
I might be able to shed a little bit of light on some of your questions there. I do know it is Kneehill County residents that they are counting there. How it is counted is if they applied for a card. So unless they are going through your Marigold card, it won't be counted. So if you're a student and you're only getting your books through school time, that won't be counted. If you're getting your books also in addition to those school books using a Marigold card, and each card is to be to each individual, there isn't a family card. So it could again be the child, but the actual school use would not be reflected in that number.
Okay, thank you. That does help clarify things a bit. But I'm still concerned that we have. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, just Councillor Phobes then.
One of the things when we went down to do the run through with them, they did mention that the card also access all their online stuff as well.
Okay, Councillor McGee.
And in addition to that, it made me think of Shelley's report today. Not that it mitigates it 100% or anything like that, but there is so much online stuff, and we have seen in Marigold a huge increase in people in need for getting online service for their needs, and have been utilizing the libraries quite more substantially. There are some libraries who have also been kind enough to even have volunteers to help them go through that process of getting those things. So there is a social component to this aspect too. I agree with Reeve Woodstock that seeing a constant increase is hard to keep taking. But having said that, I'm a strong believer in library being a very important part of community and a very important part of engaging our youth into being strong citizens. So that's just my 2 bits.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vanderquill.
I do believe that this hasn't really been communicated strongly throughout Kneehill County. I think if we do a strong campaign on, you can get your Marigold library fee for free with Kneehill County, being a Kneehill County resident, I think that would go a long way to increase users.
So we really haven't promoted this through our newsletters or through our county publications. Is it on our webpage? Do we promote?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure that it is.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? Councillor Christie.
This is the first time I've seen the census higher than the 5,001. So one of the first census numbers that came back was actually lower than 5,001, was it not?
Through Mr. Chair, administration is still trying to determine which number is actually correct, because as you said, we've seen different estimates from the province and different groups, and I think the estimate here is about the 4th different number that I've seen.
So what you're saying is it doesn't make census? Sorry. Okay, so what do we want to do? Do we want to go ahead with this, or do we want to ask for more information? I'm getting a sense that we're not totally 100% on this one, so what's the wish of council? Not everyone's jumping in. Councillor Christie.
My response would be, I'm in at the right census number.
Okay, you're in if the census number is correct. Any other comments? Excuse me, you said that they needed this by September?
September 30th is the due date to have this.
So we do have time to make this decision. So would it be reasonable to suggest that we postpone and ask for more information and further clarification? To me, that would make sense. However, I can't make that motion. So if that's the direction that we would like to go, I would counsel someone else to make that motion. Reeve Whitstock?
Yes, I'm not, well, I don't see any motions on the screen here, so I'm having a hard time, but yes, if we could craft something to bring back more information, whether that be a presenter from Marigold or I don't know what it would take, but let's just say move to receive for information currently and look for clarification on the numbers and the population, and I don't know, it's pretty convoluted.
Okay, so we just make a motion asking administration to bring back more information to validate the Marigold numbers.
Yeah, that would be sufficient.
Okay, so the motion reads that Reeve Whitstock moved that council direct administration to bring back more information to validate the Marigold user numbers.
Yes, that would be worded correctly.
Mr. Hogan.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if Reeve Whitstock is willing, does council want to make that motion just a little bit more broad in terms of to bring back more information regarding the Marigold library system? Because there were some other questions that were raised in that discussion around even the benefits of membership.
Okay, so
I would accept that.
Sorry, Reeve Whitstock, go ahead.
I would accept that motion. I would make that motion.
Okay, so Reeve Whitstock moved that council direct administration to bring back more information regarding the Marigold library system.
Sounds good.
Okay, if we could just transpose those two words, please, Carolyn. Library and Marigold. Okay, so the motion reads, Reeve Whitstock moved that council direct administration to bring back more information regarding the Marigold library system. Okay, we understand, we have a concept of where we're going. Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimous. We do have time, so there's an opportunity here to get more information, so let's take that opportunity. All right, how are we doing? Anybody need a break? Are we good? All right, seeing no desire for that, we'll move on to 7.2, which is the draft strategic plan. And Mr. Hogan.
Yeah. Through Mr. Chair to council, the item that's in front of you is regarding the strategic plan, which was a subject of a delegation and discussion that council had earlier in the meeting. In the RFD, I'm not going to go through the verbatim through the proposed mission vision statement. All of that was contained in the document that you've already seen. From that delegation this morning and from the discussion surrounding it, it's apparent that council is looking for some format editing to the document in terms of increasing its readability, increasing the focus on the text rather than pictures and things of that nature. If that is council's wish, at least that's what we heard this morning, but if that is council's wish, then the recommendation would alter that rather than council adopt the 2022-2025 strategic plan, that the recommendation will be that council direct administration to continue working with a consultant to finalize the 2022 to 2025 strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. So what's the wish of council? I think it was summarized pretty clearly in Mr. Hogan's summary. Is that what we're asking? Okay, so then would somebody care to make the motion that council direct administration to continue working with the facilitator to complete the 2022 strategic plan? Councillor Cunningham.
I'll move that council direct administration to continue working with the facilitator to complete the 2022 strategic plan.
Okay, so the motion is that council direct administration to continue working with the facilitator and to complete the 2022 strategic plan. Okay, we're all clear? All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 8.1, delegation and public hearing business, the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services delegation. Mr. Hogan.
To council through you, Mr. Chair, this item is looking just to recommend to council that we receive the delegation that was made earlier today for information as presented. That's the normal course of action on these. There's nothing from that report that requires council's approval or anything of that nature. So again, the recommendation is that you just receive that report. Receive is the word I'm looking for. You receive that report for information as presented.
Okay. All right, so we're looking for a motion to receive. Councillor Christie.
I'd make the motion to receive for information Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services Annual Report as presented.
Okay. So I have a motion to receive as presented the Kneehill Regional Family and Community Support Services Annual Report and presentation. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. And then we move on to 8.2, which is the accurate assessment delegation. And I'm assuming this is a very similar type of action. Mr. Hogan?
To council through the chair, it would be the same indeed. We're not recommending that any specific action be taken out of the report or the presentation made by Accurate Assessment. That's part of their yearly report to council in terms of keeping council aware of what's going on there from the assessment side. So we're recommending that that also be received for information as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. So would someone care to make that motion? Reeve Whitstock.
Yes, I would move that council receive for information the accurate assessment presentation.
Thank you. So we have a motion to receive for information. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. Thank you. All right, then we move on to council and committee reports. We have one that I see here, and that is from Community Futures Wild Rose. Councillor Christie.
So along with the minutes, I'd just say that if you got an entrepreneur or small business that's looking for help, send them their way. I think as a group, we need to put more emphasis on advertising and promotion. It's a very valuable service and it would help small business get going.
Okay, so a good reminder that if there's entrepreneurs out there or businessmen looking for help, Community Futures Wild Rose is a great place to access that help. Right? So we need a motion to accept. Councillor Christie.
I'll move the council and committee reports as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to receive council and committee reports for information. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. And then we're on to 10.0, which is council follow-up action list. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Cunningham.
I just want to say thank you. I see that we have the presentation for the Eastwater delivery study to be done on June 21st Cal meeting. So thank you for that. And I know Ms. Anderson will do a wonderful job of getting that out to ratepayers, that information out.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councillor McGee.
I move that we receive for information the council follow-up action list as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion to receive for information. All those in favor? And that also is carried unanimously. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. We have no items for closed session today. And so the next item on the agenda is the one we all look forward to, especially when the days get long, which is motion to adjourn. It's 10:57. I'll make the motion to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.